You must be very happy you live here.
100% heated pool, quite a decent vibe. And straight after that, you can just hop into the jacuzzi.
With a view over Sydney. I'm with Matt DeFreitas. He's a good friend of mine. He's from South Africa originally, and he's basically going to recount his story about him and his family moving from South Africa to Australia.
Just to kick off, so just to give you some perspective, I've been in Australia now 9 years. Moved over straight after school, so when I was 18.
Okay.
And then studied here, went to uni here. Originally kicked off in Melbourne because, as you're well aware, property in Sydney is really expensive. We all did want to move here as a family to Sydney, but at that point in time, Melbourne was a lot more affordable. It was easier to get into the market, so my parents decided to move us there. Growing up in Johannesburg, where there's a lot of sun, there's a lot of good weather. I'll be honest, like slogging it in Melbourne was pretty tough. And a part of me always kind of wanted to move to Sydney when I was in Melbourne because it never really felt like home. Because I would equate Melbourne to the Cape Town of Australia and Sydney more so the Johannesburg of Australia. After studying and working about a year up in Melbourne, I ended up moving over to Sydney. Now I've been in Sydney 4 years. So 5 years Melbourne, 4 years Sydney.
So how did you find it moving to Australia from South Africa? Was it an easy process?
Being completely honest, I think there was a large degree of a culture shock just because in Africa as a whole, if you look at any country in Africa, they actually call it Ubuntu, community or friendship. So that's kind of like number one need in Africa because a large amount of the stuff's community based. A lot of people don't have a lot in Africa, so naturally speaking, the community becomes important to help each other. Yeah. Whereas I noticed here, and I think it's just the nature of any developed country, there was a bit more of individualism, which is the same, I think, even when I've been to the UK, stuff like that. It's a normal facet. So I think I was a bit surprised that when I first moved here, it was probably a bit harder to make friends, if I'm being completely honest. I felt like a lot of the people here, once they had their school friends, that was that. They weren't as interested or as open to forming a new community or friends. So in that respect, it was a bit of a culture shock in that people seemed a bit more closed than South Africa. But as I say, that's the case with most developed countries. But I mean, on the flip side, I was also amazed by a lot of things, like being able to jog at night, for example, like that's priceless. Like, even though I'll be honest, when I was jogging the first few times, like I was like kind of looking over my shoulder for the first 3 months, which is a normal part because of, obviously South Africa is quite a dangerous place in a lot of the areas there. But in a way, like my quality of life was enhanced because you have more freedom in that sense. Like, if I'm doing a jog, I want to walk to the beach at night, I no longer have to worry about that. I would not leave the house after like 7 p.m. by foot and just walk around randomly in Johannesburg. That's the truth. So, I mean, I think it's counterbalanced by both. There have been pros, there have been cons. But overall, I would say, even of what I mentioned on the friend side, I think it's just a bit different in the sense that Australians definitely still are friendly people. They just take a bit longer to warm up. So it's like it's not like you can't make friends here. You definitely can. It's just view, I think, of community here. I think that's probably one of the key things.
And why did you move? Why did your family move to Australia from South Africa?
Yeah,
was it the safety aspect or just economic?
I think, to be honest, it's two good points you made. They're probably both of those hit the nail on the head. Probably the most important was safety. So, Johannesburg, as you're well aware, it's one of the most dangerous places on the planet. That's factually, I think it's got beautiful place, don't get me wrong, got a lot of good aspects, but it's literally statistically one of the most dangerous places to live. It is what it is. And I think, having grown up, like even my dad got held up at gunpoint in our own house, like stuff like that. We had seen a lot of it. Then you'd even ask your friend, like, what did you do on the weekend? And then your friend would be like, oh yeah, nothing much, like, but our house got broken into. We kind of just like slog it off. And those things they were always just a bit too close to home, Nothing personally actually happened directly to me though. That's what's very interesting. I lived there 18 years, nothing happened directly to me, but it was just getting closer to home. And just because you see all this stuff happening, a lot of people choose to slug it out. They'll say, oh, it's not going to happen to me. But logically speaking, like, just because if it happens to someone else, it can happen to you, right? So safety was probably the main facet, and I mean, you've touched on a good point economically. The rand it's actually one of the most volatile currencies on the planet. So huge dips have occurred in the rand, and I guess the way we saw it is the longer you wait it out, there's a chance that the rand might drop to a point where when you move to a foreign country, even if it's not Australia, even if it's Europe, whatever, your assets are going to get slashed a lot more than they would so I guess the economics was there, and I mean, it's no secret, like from a political standpoint, there's been like a degree of a lot of back and forth in terms of stability, and it's affected investor confidence somewhat. So all of those factors probably drove us to make the long-term decision.
Yeah. And what migration stream did you come on? Was it like a business visa for your father?
So we came straight on PR.
Okay.
And that was because when we were looking to move, it was a lot easier. Australia is definitely tightened the screws now. It's a lot harder to move. And I would say to give me a future with the most options. And they had been planning a move already when I was 13. And then my brother and I, and we already had PR granted at that point.
Okay.
And then my brother and I were just being brats because, we had a whole life in South Africa. We didn't want to move. We were like, oh yeah, no mom, I got my friends here. We really put up a fight. Then my parents were literally like, you know what, we're not putting up with this. Well, if this is how they're going to act, we're going to wait until they're a bit older.
Yes.
So then they applied for a 5-year extension on the PR.
Okay.
And then we literally took that up on the very last year. We weren't even sure if we were going to come.
Okay.
And then on the very last year of that, we were like, okay, look, maybe it's the time to move now. And because... I just finished school. All the factors were like, it was kind of like a now or never moment, and we knew that. So then we decided to take it up then. But for me, it was very smooth sailing. Moved directly with my parents. PR already had, but I know it's not as simple as it is now. It's changed a lot.
Yeah. And did you have a house to move in over here, or did you rent initially? Did you have a support?
So initially we were renting, and we were that's actually probably another difference I should speak about. Like, we were shocked at the pricing differential in property here versus South Africa. So to put things in perspective, in South Africa, there's no real land shortages there, so the houses are actually really, really big.
Yes.
So on average, a property could be as large as like 900 square meters. That's not really, you wouldn't really be impressed. Like if I had a friend who came up to me and said, oh, I have a 900 square meter, because it's like a lot of garden. We have like a lot of garden space.
Yes.
And so I mean, our property was like 900 square meters. It wasn't like a mansion or anything, but it's quite sizable.
That's
in Australian, like if you had to come to you and I said, oh, I have a 9, had sold our property, I think back there for like, keep in mind that was a 900 square meter property.
Yeah.
I think we sold that for just under 200k at that point.
Australian dollars.
AUD, yeah. And then, I mean, we got here and we were like, mate, what is going on, Because like, now if we want to buy like a studio, can't even buy like a studio for 200k, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to begin off, like, we obviously rented, and then over time, like after, and we were shocked by, watching like the rent to quality ratio there. Yeah. I was also shocked, like, a lot of the houses like didn't have fences. So I remember the first time we were like looking at properties, I was like telling the agents, like, where's the electric fence? Where's the barbed wire? They just looked at me like I was crazy. But yeah, I mean, we rented first. It's like kind of southeast Melbourne. So ended up settling there for 5 years. But we were like, I mean, to a degree, my parents were lucky because even when they entered the market, then it still was kind of affordable. Like, I'll be honest, if we were to have made the move today, I don't think we could have done it financially, just because like everything skyrocketed across every state.
You just did it at the right time for you.
Like literally just made it in time. Yeah. Because I mean, like back then you could still buy a property like for, literally under like 350. That was like southeast Melbourne.
Yes.
Now, good luck. You're going to southeast Melbourne, it's going to be a lot harder to get anything, some of those properties in that area now, even like, I had a look the other day, some of them are even clocking like 700k. It's ridiculous. Wow, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
And then you moved from Melbourne to Sydney. Did you go to school or uni in Sydney?
So I went to uni. I went to uni in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I would say it was quite interesting, the whole university experience, because to a large degree, and this is just my own 2 cents, if we actually really are talking differences about countries here,
Yeah.
I actually find my school in South Africa a lot harder than university here.
Oh, okay. In
So-
terms of like
In terms of like,
subjects
yeah, in terms
and,
of like the actual
academic
workload and just the difficulty. So I would say like uni was actually kind of smooth sailing, if I'm being honest, just because I think if you go to a private school in South Africa, so I went to like a private school in South Africa, the standards, they tend to be fairly aligned with IB standards almost. I was surprised at how easy uni was here. But yeah, I mean, I think probably on the counterbalance to that, finding work was a lot harder here than it would have been in South Africa.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that's like a counter, I guess I'm giving each perspective. So I think for like, it's almost like a game of pros and cons, you know?
Yeah. So are you pleased you moved from South Africa to Australia?
Oh, 100%,
Yeah.
zero regrets.
Yeah.
I think like overall, I mean, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like immigration is not easy. Like if you actually look at the psychology stuff, I actually looked, because I'm always into my psychology, as you're aware. And
Yeah.
I think I was looking up, came across an article, I think top 5 traumas a human being can go through.
Yes.
And I remember on one of the studies, like immigration was literally rated as the top 3 because if you think about it, you're leaving your whole friendship network behind.
Yeah.
You're leaving, in some cases, you know, you're leaving your job. In some cases, you're leaving family. You know, there's a new culture you need to integrate into. So I'm not going to sugarcoat and say, oh yeah, I just hit here, smooth sailing. I'll be honest, I don't think that exists. Like, I think there's a degree of integration. I think it takes some time when you move. However, with all those factors, do I, you know, am I happy with the decision? 100%. I mean, Australia's given me new perspectives. Infrastructure here is fantastic.
Yep.
There's so much safety, you know, beautiful landscapes wherever you go.
Yep.
So, I mean, you really, my view on it is I have zero regrets because whilst my standard of living in South Africa might have been higher, as I said, I mean, bigger house here.
Yes.
Bigger house in South Africa. That kind of material facets were there. And obviously here, we've had to downgrade a lot. But, so the standard of living was higher, but the quality of life in Australia is way higher.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't put a price on freedom, you can't put a price on good infrastructure. And I mean, like, to a large degree, like, as I say, like, in my own experience, when you actually get to know the Australians, they give you a fair go and they actually are nice people. So,
Yes. So you work in the financial industry now?
I kind of just broke into finance very barely. So that to me is a huge difference because if I was in South Africa, I'd either call up my network, number one, or if I had a finance degree, that would already book me ahead of most applicants anyway. So definitely a huge thing. In terms of work pathway, I ended up settling more in a corporate finance role. But even then, it was one of the big 4. I personally don't, I can say this on the record, I don't really like the structure of billable hours and the likes. I think it's a bit subjugative in my own opinion. And that led me to like miss the people interaction, which is why now I'm working in corporate banking, basically a mix of corporate finance and debt capital markets and client relationship management. And I've been really happy with that. I've been in it now nearly 5 years and I feel like it's paid dividends. Like, you know, it's decent work-life balance. Uber for me, often into work, it's like $15. Okay. So my view on it is like, I'm a utilitarian. I'm happy to spend on what gives me convenience. Stepping right off onto my apartment, stepping right out, getting dropped right at work for me, avoiding that sardine rush in the morning, that's worth $15 to me. So I actually Uber in, I Uber back.
And I suppose if you were to drive, you'd have to park.
Exactly, 100%. Then you know you have to pay parking, and then so my view on it personally, I'm lucky, and that's what St. Leonard's is a great place to live because I can literally drive in. It's like maybe 10-15 minutes. I don't think it's that expensive via Uber. It brings me utility. So I Uber most days in and out, to be honest.
And do you go back to South Africa much?
That's your question. I don't go back that often, and I think another constraint there is just cost. Like, it's ridiculous. I think, like, I was looking at tickets the other day. Some of them were like $6,000 return. It's just excessive. So, and for that, I can do Europe multiple times. So it's like, you know, most of our immediate family's here. So my brother's here, my mom's here, and like we're all in Sydney as well. So we don't really see a huge need to go back. And you know, like a lot of my friends have moved over. Like my best friend, my childhood friend, he actually moved. He moved a couple of years ago to Melbourne. So I literally saw him a few weeks ago. So so I guess, like, to be honest, like a lot, even some of my close friendship network are moving to Australia. So I don't really see as much of a need to go back.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And plus, I never lost the accent as
Yeah,
well, so it's like, yeah.
You won some Australian Financial Review Top 100 Future Leaders Award.
You know, look, if I'm being completely honest, part of the reason why I actually did that competition echoes how competitive the market was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that as a graduate, I needed to differentiate myself and could do anything to get any type of, I guess, public exposure or credentials which would kind of land me above another graduate. Yeah, I mean, overall it was a great experience. That was actually my first time back in Sydney when I did that program. That program worked. You had to apply, and then if you were successful, you'd get nominated as one of the top 100 leaders, and they put a picture of you, they put you in the newspaper, which was good. I think it was good. They're giving like graduates that credibility, and if you know, my recommendation would be, if you are a graduate, it's a great place to you know, I guess get a key competitive advantage. And then after that, you would like compete in a competition after that, and then it was good networking opportunities.
Yeah.
So yeah, no regrets through doing that.
Yeah,
it's
it's
always a flex, you know. And I'm at an interview, I'm like, yeah, there you go. Yeah, and you should always like express yourself authentically. But the reality is, when you're in the job market, at least in this current state of play, a lot of the employers don't always, they say they kind of want an authentic expression, but the truth is they want a personal brand. So I guess the point which I'm alluding to is like, part of that personal brand is doing stuff like the Australian Financial Review. Like, truth be told, like, don't get me wrong, it was a good experience.
Yes.
But is it something I'm going to look back on my deathbed and be like, oh yeah, it was the best thing? No, probably not. But at the same time, it opened up a lot of job opportunities for me. A lot of employers nowadays, particularly in the Australian market, do care about a personal brand. So yeah, from that perspective, it was one of the better career choices I've made. And what's funny is, it's a funny thing. It also goes to show like presentation in a way. I was quite surprised. I thought, I'll be honest, when I was in interviews and stuff, I thought people wouldn't look at it that much. But the minute they see something they know, because I mean, it's funny how people react to that. The minute they see something they know, like, oh wow. But at the end of the day, all it was I put in an application, I got nominated, anyone can do it. So, but I still don't regret it. It still helped me in my career.
Yeah, you also do a lot of work for charity.
So Fred Hollows, he was basically one of Australia and New Zealand's most famous eye doctors. So he was actually known for his charity efforts in alleviating blindness, particularly in developing countries. So just to give you some facts, so 9 out of 10 people in developing countries don't have to be blind. In other words, it's preventable. And Fred Hollows came around and basically did all these trips by himself to these developing countries. He figured out these people don't have to be blind. And on top of that, he figured out it could be done for a really, really cheap price. So $25 actually gives someone eyesight. And to another key fact there is there's been loads of analysis on charities. So most charities are actually tax efficient businesses. That's the reality of the game. They don't actually help, and that's just the truth. However, Fred Hollows is actually one of the most transparent charities around. So there were actually hedge fund analysts who looked at impact analysis across all of the charities in terms of transparency and effective altruism. In other words, what is the minimum amount of spend which gets the most impact? Fred Hollows ranked number 1.
So if I was to give you $25, somebody would have
literally,
for life.
Literally. I mean, that is amazing. Like, think about the flow and effects of that. That person can now work, they can support their family, and it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen to someone. And like, I think eyesight's the most precious gift on this planet. Quite frankly, can't do much, you know, without seeing. So, so I mean, in the field of charities, as I say, like, you know, not all of them are. I don't think a lot of them are hitting the impact Fred Hollows is doing. Like, for me, because a lot of people want to help people, you know, and you know, everyone, like particularly in the corporate world, you know, people are like, oh yeah, no, I can't make a difference, I can't do this, I can't do that. So I felt like Fred Hollows was a good charity to trumpet, because it's like almost like communicating the message, hey, you can make a difference. All you need to do is donate $25, and everyone has $25. People are buying like Nike Airs for $400. So you know, that how many, you know, that's a lot of eyesight there. You know, just don't buy a pair of Nike shoes, give it to Fred Hollows.
Give people eyesight. And overall, are you happy you moved to Australia? Would you recommend people in South Africa or any country in the world move to Australia?
I would say overall, do I have any regrets about this decision? No, not at all. I 100% back my decision to move here. And I think, as I say though, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, there's the cost and benefits, but the benefits definitely have outweighed the cost. That's the truth. And I think a key answer to that question is it all depends on your life situation. Like, I came in very smooth. I had PR. I had immediate family here. I was living in a fairly good state, like Melbourne, Sydney, probably one of the two best places. I had a fairly smooth runway. I was really blessed in that respect. Now, if someone's coming in, they don't have all of that. Would I recommend it? Depends on the cost and benefit for that person. So I guess the answer is going to be different depending to the life situation you're moving in with. In terms of my facets of life I came in with, I'd 100% recommend it. And I think the most important fact here is it gave me a different perspective to look at what is normal in life. And I've learned so much through being in Australia because, the Australians have taught me to challenge what normal is. So, and that in itself is worth it, just for that additional perspective.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So this is where you live, Matt. This is very, very nice apartment. So you've got a beautiful view of Sydney in the background.
Prosperous place for a prosperous person.
So it must be like living in a hotel here.
It is. As you can tell, you've got good views. You've got a spa right over there. You've got a barbecue section right over here. This is where I come to get big. As you can see, top quality machinery.
Is this a typical place where Australians live, or do you have to be relatively affluent to live here?
No, I think it's definitely accessible to most Australians, assuming you get a studio. I'm not going to lie, the 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms are just ridiculous. I'm noting that not all places in Sydney have these facilities. I had to do quite a bit of digging, but if you look hard enough, you can definitely get a place as good as this.
We hope you have enjoyed Matt's story, and thank you for watching Lewis and Bonnie's Australia.